When Melody Shari finally packed her bags and left Huntsville, it wasn't just a move, it was a declaration of freedom. For years, she had smiled through the chaos, built a brand beside a man who tore her confidence down piece by piece and carried the weight of a broken home for the sake of appearances. But the moment she realized peace was worth more than pride, everything changed. The cameras had stopped rolling, but the real drama had just begun. The court battles, the late-night phone calls, the whispered rumors, all of it pushed her closer to one truth. She could never heal in the same place she was hurt. So she walked away, not to run from her past, but to reclaim her future. With every mile between her and Huntsville, she was leaving behind control, betrayal, and noise. This wasn't about Martell anymore. It was about Melody finally choosing herself. And when she whispered, "This time it's for peace," that's when her real story began. Not the one the world filmed, but the one she wrote with her own freedom. The court may have given Melody Shari the right to move, but the truth is, nothing about leaving was easy. Huntsville had been her home, the place where she built her name, her business, and her family. Every memory, good or bad, was buried in that soil. She could walk into a restaurant and remember a birthday celebration that once felt like love, then glance at a corner booth and remember the night everything fell apart. It wasn't just a city. It was a reminder of what she lost and what she survived. When she finally decided to pack her things, it felt like closing the door on an entire chapter of her life. The house echoed with laughter that no longer lived there, the scent of her kids' favorite meals, the weight of conversations that ended in silence. She watched her daughter clutch a favorite doll and her son stare quietly at the floor, both too young to understand, but old enough to feel the shift in the air. Melody wanted to cry, but she held it in because mothers don't get to fall apart. She taped the last box shut and whispered to herself that this time she wasn't running. She was choosing peace. The drive to Atlanta was long, both on the road and in her heart. Every mile pulled her further from the man who had tried to define her and closer to the woman she was finally becoming. Her kids slept in the back seat as the sunset washed over the highway, and for the first time in a long time, she felt stillness. The moment the Atlanta skyline appeared in the distance, tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from the strange relief of beginning again. The house she rented was quiet and bare, boxes stacked in corners, no furniture yet, no noise, just space. For most people, emptiness would feel lonely, but for Melody, it felt like oxygen. She put the kids to bed that night, opened her laptop, and stared at a list of things she needed to do. School enrollments, business paperwork, schedules, bills. It was overwhelming, but she had faced worse. Every click of the keyboard was another step towards stability. Yet even in this piece, there was a shadow. Martell's name would flash across her phone screen at odd hours. Sometimes it was just silence, sometimes yelling, sometimes guilt. He wanted to remind her that no matter the distance, he could still reach her. She learned to stop answering, to take a breath instead of a call. Every time she ignored the phone, it was a small act of rebellion. It wasn't hatred that kept her away from him. It was exhaustion. Years of defending herself, explaining, arguing, pretending, it had drained her. In that quiet kitchen, surrounded by boxes, Melody promised herself that this move would mean more than a new address. It would be the beginning of peace for her children. She thought about how much they had seen, the arguments, the tension, the confusion, and she knew she owed them something different. That night, she wrote in her journal, not for the world to read, but to remind herself of why she started. "I'm not escaping," she wrote. "I'm healing." And even though the world would judge, even though rumors would twist her story, Melody had finally chosen a path that no one else could walk for her. Melody's days in Atlanta started blending together, filled with a quiet determination that no one else could understand. Each morning she woke up before the kids, sat in the stillness, and reminded herself that peace had to be earned one decision at a time. The sound of her coffee maker was the only noise in the apartment, but to her, it was a symbol of freedom. She missed the comfort of familiarity, but she didn't miss the chaos that used to come with it. Her children asked innocent questions about home and why things had to change, and every answer she gave was wrapped in calm strength. She refused to let bitterness become part of their story. Atlanta felt different, freer, a place where she could rebuild without the pressure of eyes watching her every move. She worked harder than ever, channeling her pain into her music and projects, turning every wound into a verse, every heartbreak into motivation. The world still talked about her, still tried to tie her name to the drama she walked away from. But Melody was learning how to move in silence. At night, when her kids were asleep, she'd sit by the window, scrolling through old memories she couldn't completely erase, not because she missed the man she left behind, but because those moments reminded her of how far she had come. Martell was now a name that belonged to her past, but the impact lingered like a scar, visible only if you looked closely. Every message, every headline, every reminder was a test, but she refused to react. Her strength no longer came from fighting back. It came from staying still. She surrounded herself with good energy, prayer, and purpose. Healing, she realized, wasn't about pretending everything was fine. It was about accepting that some things would never be the same. She had cried enough, explained enough, and tried enough. Now she was just living, not for a storyline, not for validation, but for peace. Months passed, and the woman who once felt broken began to glow again. Melody had learned how to balance motherhood, business, and healing with a calm that came from deep understanding rather than revenge. The pain that used to consume her had turned into discipline. She no longer needed to prove her worth to anyone, least of all to Martell. The distance between them became more than physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and final. Even when their paths crossed because of the children, she carried herself with a quiet grace that made him realize she was no longer his to reach. Every time she spoke, there was power in her voice, not from anger, but from peace. She had outgrown the version of herself that begged to be understood. The more she focused on her growth, the more opportunities came her way. Her music began resonating with women who saw their own stories in hers. Her brand expanded, her followers grew, and her message evolved into something larger than entertainment. It became a testimony of strength. Yet fame no longer thrilled her. It was just a platform to inspire others to survive what she had already overcome. The same woman who once cried behind closed doors now stood on stages with confidence, speaking about resilience and self-worth. There were still nights when she felt lonely, but loneliness no longer scared her. It reminded her that peace often exists in silence. She stopped checking social media comments, stopped feeding into the noise, and instead poured that energy into her children, ensuring they grew up surrounded by love that didn't hurt. Sometimes when the house was quiet and she looked at their sleeping faces, she'd smile and whisper to herself that it was all worth it. Every tear, every heartbreak, every rumor, it all led her here. Melody Shari had become something that no scandal or headline could touch. She was no longer surviving the story. She was writing it. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't need an audience to clap. Her piece was enough. If you've been following Melody's journey, you know this isn't just reality TV anymore. It's real life, raw healing, and the kind of strength that can't be faked for cameras. From heartbreak to rebuilding, she's shown what it means to lose everything and still rise with grace. But the question now isn't about what she's been through. It's about what comes next. Will peace last when the past keeps knocking? Or will the next chapter bring another storm to test her calm? One thing's for sure, Melody isn't running anymore, and the world is finally seeing who she's always been beneath the drama. Stay locked in, because if you thought the story was over, you might want to think again. This is the Hype Spill, and we've got the real tea on every twist that's still to come.